Thanks for joining, everybody. As you know, Texans rely on water to live and broadband to work and learn. Um, but formal career pathways in these two areas are limited. Texas Rural Funders drew on our experience both in philanthropy and education, and put out a report. We've been working closely with the broadband office since its inception, and we have members of Texas Rural Funders who are experts in the water space. And so we wanted to combine the information that we have about water and broadband and make sure that we got it in the hands of people who can help build those pathways. So Evan, if you'll go to the next slide. I'm the executive director of Texas Rural Funders, and I'm joined by my colleague, Evan Wollstonecroft, who is our program manager. I previously worked in education in a number of different capacities, as did Evan. Again, when we were having conversations with subject matter experts in water and broadband, and we kept hearing over and over again that we needed to build pathways. One of the things we've often said is there are school districts, colleges, workforce boards, education service centers who are subject matter experts in building those pathways. And so what we've been working to do is connect the dots. So we're excited that you all have joined us today, and we'll go ahead and jump right in. So Texas Rural Funders is a membership organization focused on bringing attention and resources to rural communities. And so for funders, we provide tools and information, but there's a lot of resources that we have that are very good, and we want to make sure to share those with communities. And so we have a membership, a newsletter that we send out monthly, as well as webinars like this that we do. So we invite you to sign up for the newsletter, and thank you for joining today. For this report that we're going to share with you, we partnered with Texas Water Foundation, and their subject matter expertise is in their title, Texas Water Foundation. And so we engaged JFF for the report. And I'm going to turn it over to Evan to tell you more about that.
Sure. As Kelty opened us up with, this matters when we're thinking about the infrastructure that helps our communities live and thrive and meet our goals for education and local workforce opportunities. We can't do without broadband and water. They're quite literally the foundation of our economic development, especially in rural Texas. If we care about the future of rural Texas communities, these are resources that we can't skimp on, but it does take a trained workforce to build and sustain so that this infrastructure functions in the way that we need it to avail ourselves of the opportunities that they provide. And so the genesis of this report is really sort of looking at how can we take care of this essential workforce for this invisible infrastructure. We may not notice it in our everyday lives, but if water doesn't come out of the tap, if the Wi-Fi cuts out, suddenly it's a very clear challenge that we need to solve. And so if we're thinking about, the forecast, why is this infrastructure needed, not just for today, but for tomorrow and in the years to come? We can look at this map of projected population growth in Texas between now and 2060-ish. This is from the Texas Demographic Center. And it's telling two stories. If you're looking at the cool colors, as it gets more blue or purple, that is where population is expected to really grow in the coming decades. This is where a lot of our water needs are going to be concentrated. A lot of growth in Texas is happening along the highways, but that isn't necessarily where the water is. And so, as we think about what it needs to sustain the continued growth of our state, the places where people live and the places where water comes from, that distance is growing. And the next boil water notice, the next broken water main is going to sort of boil down to, please excuse the water pun, a workforce issue. Do we have the folks needed to build this network of pipes across the state to serve our communities? On the flip side of that, we have needs for broadband. The red and orange parts of this map, largely the rural areas of the state, are still trying to get connected to high-speed internet of the kind that can sustain virtual learning, rural economies, and jobs. Um, and oftentimes we have to import talent from other parts of the state and even other parts of the country to build the fiber cable lines or the wireless points that can keep our community connected. But you might see a division on the map between urban and rural, but these are interconnected. Rural Texas grows the food, the fuel, the fiber that continues to power the entire state economy. And so solving these infrastructure challenges and the workforce needed to build and maintain them is just as important in rural Texas as it is in urban. So we get to the workforce study. As we mentioned, this is something that we co-commissioned with the Texas Water Foundation last year in partnership with Jobs for the Future. It's a national workforce development nonprofit. And we wanted to look specifically at what are the workforce needs in these two infrastructure sectors, and what are the tools that we have to train folks into them. Our goal with this report is really to look at what is the ecosystem of this workforce and the existing programs we have. And the way that we looked at this data is analyzing information from national data sets like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but also overlaying that with real-time labor market data from interviews with workforce, employers, looking at job postings so that we can then get to some actionable recommendations for how to leverage the tools that we have to fill our workforce needs for water and broadband. So, key takeaways, we're going to give the plot away at the very front. We know that we need these jobs in water and broadband. We also know that many of the tools and programs and partners we need are already in place. If you want to look at the report, please feel free to scan the QR code here on screen. It'll take you to our executive summary and the full report. But looking at what we learned, some key takeaways. The challenge we're up against looks a little bit different depending on the sector that we're focused on. In water, we know that there is a wave of retirements coming. Over the next decade, that might mean as much as 50% of the current water workforce in the state may retire. And on the broadband side of the house, as I mentioned, there's a reliance on external contractors. You know, if you're up in the Panhandle, if you're out in West Texas and a backhoe goes over the fiber line in town, you may be waiting a few days for workforce crews to come in from Dallas or even Mississippi to come fix that. But even though we bring in jobs from outside the community, that's not to say that those aren't good paying jobs that local folks in the community couldn't have. And so we know that we need to maintain and expand the workforce for these sectors. The Broadband Development Office collected some of its own workforce data on broadband going in using OECD and CostQuest labor market data to understand some other specific occupations and roles that's helped guide some of their workforce grant program. I'm going to pause here really quickly, Kelty. Is there anything you'd add a little bit on this slide to understand some of our broadband workforce needs?
I think what's useful to know is that again, we're looking at infrastructure as a whole category. So though we're talking about water and broadband, I think there's an increasing realization that the skills required in water and broadband can be transferred between those two workforce areas and others. And so again, this was new last year from the Broadband Development Office. And I'm sure we have organizations many organizations on the call today who have been looking at your own workforce needs and may have additional local and regional insights. So kind of building on that, I think one of the questions we always think about is the job high demand and high wage? Because that's what we're all held accountable for in the pathway building space. And so I think one of the things we wanted to talk to you all about today is the data that we're looking at, the historic labor market information could not have predicted the growth in the broadband and water jobs because there's been so much new investment and attention in both areas. And so again, what you see up here on the screen, and we actually didn't update this slide to talk about the dollars that just were allocated at the state level for water. So again, huge investment in much needed infrastructure. But then when you dig into each one individually, as you probably know, if you live and work in a rural community, we need a water utility. It's often not a major employer, like your school district or a college or, a manufacturer. But so that is to say, the vast majority of the water utility jobs are at places that have a small number of employees. So no, it's not going to show up high demand. But the question I would ask you is, do you like your clean water coming out of the tap? And so in that respect, it is a huge need. And these are also good jobs that are stable, that are often like a county job. On the broadband side of the house, as many of you may know, BEAD dollars are just about to begin flowing, and rural areas are where we don't have broadband, and where we don't have the workers yet to build broadband. Next slide, Evan. And so I've previewed a little bit of this already, but while the wages are not super high in the water space, they are competitive and on par often with other public entities. And as I stated earlier, often these are pretty stable jobs, particularly in water. And there are crews being sent, like as broadband build out is happening, crews that will be moved from place to place to build what we need. And we're going to talk through examples later in the presentation about some of the wraparound supports that employers have built and what the education pathways look like. So again, I stated earlier that these are in demand now, even if your labor market information did not show it in the past. And so that's why we wanted to bring this conversation together, because we're really trying to get the attention of school districts, colleges, workforce boards, TEA, and the coordinating board, because you all are on the front lines of building those pathways, and many of you are involved with programs that can help connect the dots in a really important way. Next slide. Next slide. So the big challenge that we found from the report is that training should be expanded and improved, but it looks different by sector. So what they found in the water space is that there's not enough people passing the exams. So it's important to think about what we're doing with training that would improve pass rates. Meanwhile, in the broadband space, because it's so brand new, and the training programs have not existed at the state or often the regional level, there is not standardized national or state training. It's often employers who are doing their own training. But again, this is where you all can come in and be helpful. Evan, is there anything that you want to add? Okay. So having worked in the education space before Evan and I started this report, I said we just need a picture to be able to explain to the water and broadband partners what a career pathway looks like. I'm not showing you all anything that you don't already understand. This was a graphic that I'm very excited we were able to create to show the work that all of you all are doing so that that the broadband and water professionals would understand that it's super important to engage with you all. And so I think the main takeaway from the report that you all already know that others in the world need to understand is we have the resources in place to build the pathways. We just aren't doing it yet for water and broadband. Next slide, Evan. So many of you are involved in regional programs like R-PEP, Texas Regional Pathways Network, education service centers and workforce boards in general. And so you are looking at data, thinking about what certifications are relevant in your regional labor market. Some of you may already have been thinking about what does our curriculum look like. Today, we're going to talk to you about a couple of ways that you can infuse water and broadband curriculum into what you're doing. The thing that we're excited also to share with you today is that there are employers who are very engaged and interested in partnering in both of these areas. And there's funding that has just flowed from the broadband office in particular that is already in action. Dollars are about to come from the state level for water that may also support it. So the takeaway here is there's nothing new or different than we need to do. It's that we need to focus our attention on water and broadband and figure out what makes sense for your region and your partnerships. Next slide, Evan. So I will not talk you through these next slides, but we want you all to know that we know you're working hard. The tri-agency regional conveners are doing great work. On the next slide, the regional pathways teams that are part of that, and then R-PEP, which is on the next slide. And part of why these slides are in here is we've been out presenting at the Workforce Commission Conference and in other places. And so remember that the broadband and water subject matter experts often don't know that these programs exist in the education workforce space. And so what we're saying to them is, here are partners in your regions you can go and talk to. And to that end, we are putting on a broadband conference in Dallas on February 10th and 11th. And that will be a place where regional teams will be looking to make connections. And one of the content areas we're talking about is building the workforce. Next slide, Evan. So again, the actions that you all can take are to work to incorporate your local knowledge and make sure that water and broadband are priorities in your region, helping get the word out. And so you all may be part of an R-PEP or TRPN. And it may be important to reach out to employers. So we're about to talk through some of the really exciting training that's available for free in the water space and the training that's coming online very soon in the broadband space. And so if you take nothing else away, we want to encourage you to take these actions. And so I think I turn it over to Evan at the next slide.
Yes, indeed. And folks, you will get a copy of these slides and of this recording. So have no fear if we're moving through some of the previous slides at a fast clip. You will get these in your inbox after this webinar. But as Kelty mentioned, there are multiple ways that we can take action to incorporate water and broadband pathways in our regions. And in our report, we feature some specific case studies from across the state of how people have done that. And I think before we dive into these, the big idea that we want you to walk away with is you don't have to create something from scratch that covers every possible district or partner or employer in your region. What each of these case studies that we're about to preview for you all, I think really help crystallize for us is you can push forward on these one step at a time. any little bit helps, and it'll contribute to the larger goal of creating a robust pipeline into these infrastructure careers. And it looks, and what step each region of the state takes at what time can look different. And it's tailored to local needs, local partners, and the assets that you have at your disposal right now. And so in Central Texas, in Austin, there is a large cross-sector partnership, a public-private partnership between the city, the county, the workforce board, local employers to create what's called the Austin Infrastructure Academy. These stakeholders looked at what are the infrastructure needs for our community in the coming decades. We know that there's an airport project. We know that we're trying to build more public transportation. And without some way to fill these jobs, to train folks for these jobs, we're estimated to have in Austin as many as 4,000 person shortfall per year in our workforce needs. And so the community college used some of its bond authority, stood up a facility to start training folks in skilled trades that feed into careers like broadband and water. Zooming across the state to El Paso, a region that has been thinking about its water security for a very long time out there in the desert. They're approaching the challenge of how do we get folks and attract them into water jobs by looking at the benefits of employment a little bit differently, not just salary, but what are some of the wraparound benefits that we can give to folks in terms of job security, placement, childcare, things that help them sustain a family above and beyond just the entry level wage that they would get as a Class D water or wastewater operator, so that they feel secure as they grow and move up in their water career. Not too much farther afield, maybe 4 hours down toward Big Bend National Park, we have an example of an employer-led effort to build out the pathway in partnership with local education partners. Big Bend Telephone, BBT, has an apprenticeship program in partnership with Sul Ross State University, where folks get on the job, work-based learning experience, and they earn something while they do it. Again, getting them into the career, getting them trained as they're already earning a wage from that. Um, I'm excited to share a little bit more about a specific water example on the next slide. But before I move forward, Kelty, is there anything you'd add on this carousel of work happening here on screen?
Um, One point that I would make in the broadband space that's just maybe an actionable fact is that for every frontline job in broadband where someone is laying fiber, the estimate is you need 4 to 5 back office people helping support those accounts. So again, I think what we don't want to do is leave you with the impression that these are all frontline infrastructure jobs and that there's no career trajectory. In our conversations with water professionals in the program Evan's about to talk about, one of them talked about starting out at the very bottom and now making a 6-figure salary. So there is career growth opportunity in both of these fields and things that are not just outside, but also back office and making the organizations run. So Evan, I'll hand it back.
So we're going to talk about a program called Seth, and this is actually inspired by a small town school district out in Westbrook, Texas. If you've ever driven on Interstate 20 between Abilene and Midland, it's about right there in the middle. They have a little less than 300 enrolled students, but like almost 100 other public school districts in Texas, the school district in Westbrook operates the municipal water system. The school district is a public water system. And so the Texas chapter of the American Water Works Association, that is the trade association for water operators and employers in Texas, we're talking with the superintendent at Westbrook ISD, and they recognize this opportunity. If we're already running the drinking water system in town, what would it be like for us to train our students to run it, to get the experience while also providing a critical public service for our neighbors. Again, using an asset that we already have at our disposal to fill a workforce need that we know that we have. And so that led to the creation of a curriculum and program called SETH. It stands for Science, Engineering, Technology, and Health. And it is a 22-hour basic waterworks operation curriculum. It's already approved by TCEQ and TEA. It is free to all Texas high schools. Texas American Waterworks Association helps cover the student exam fees, and it is expanding across the state. It's in 10 school districts now, and adding more to the cohort as they move forward. Something that Kelty mentioned while we were on our case study slide a few minutes ago was that these infrastructure jobs aren't all frontline, skilled trades and construction. When we're talking about water and broadband infrastructure, it's not folks out on the line or unearthing a pipeline. It's also the folks working in the back office, doing all of the things that help these run as businesses, and that help serve the community. And so, much like with some of these other examples of pathway programs, Seth fits within multiple pathways that you may already have in your district or at your campus. If you have a health pathway, this water program, Seth, can fit there. If you have a business pathway, Seth can fit there too. You don't have to create something out of whole cloth to introduce this curriculum because it fits well in a number of different programs that your district may already have. And of course, the big benefit that Texas AWWA has sort of already helped figure out so that individual school districts don't have to figure it out themselves is the licensure. Upon completing the course, students are qualified to sit for their Class D provisional water operator's license and then go seek employment with the local water system. Class D is that entry level credential into a water operator career. And from there, you can sit for your Class C, B, A, but more importantly, that is what you need to enter the water sector as a water operator.
So I'll
Kelty,
add,
anything to add? Oh, go ahead.
yep, this photograph that you see right here is actually, I believe, students from Pflugerville,
Hmm.
ISD. So the idea originated in Westbrook. It was piloted in Pflugerville. I know that there were 10 schools immediately. And so what's exciting is there are water employers who are part of that association who are enthusiastic to partner with school districts, which is part of why we want to tell you all about this. So that's all I'll add there, Evan.
Well, and it's not just about drinking water either. It's also about the water that we use. And so, sort of in a different strategy, the Wastewater Association, Water Environment Association of Texas, has been developing its own basic wastewater operator course. And this has grown from a registered apprenticeship program that they have through the Department of Labor with learning objectives already approved by TCEQ. These apprenticeship programs have been piloted in North Texas with Trinity River Authority, Tarrant County College, and NCT COG to help train students. And it helps get them into their Class D wastewater operator licensure. They have been working with TEA for this curriculum to be CTE reimbursable, so it could be introduced at a high school level. And they're developing a video course similar to how Seth is structured, so that the actual training can be distributed to schools throughout Texas without specifically the need of having a current wastewater operator in the room to lead the training themselves. It's asynchronous. Kelty? Anything to add here? So, passing it back to you to talk a little bit about broadband programs we know are coming.
So as I mentioned earlier, the broadband office made what is a fairly sizable award, just under $25 million to 7 organizations. They are getting their programs up and running right now. And we know that because we've done calls with all 7 of these organizations. Some of them are doing work that is specific to their region. Some of them are able to expand easily across the state, but they're coming online shortly, and it's a mix of some of them are in an introduction through the lens of an employer. So the eText communication is building a virtual reality introduction to laying fiber. A&M Kingsville will be taking a higher ed approach. Those two organizations actually plan to work together. Some of them are using, I'm forgetting the fiber association.
Fiber
Fiber,
Optic Association and Fiber Broadband Association are the two
uh,
curricula many of them are using.
yep. So there are a handful that are using national curriculum from two different organizations. Some of them actually have apprenticeships built in. So I would say one, we will share, we're working on a document that explains a little bit more about what each one is doing based on the calls we had, and we plan to share that out and make posters for our upcoming broadband conference in Dallas, but we will also make sure to share that out with you all. So if you have an interest and one of these is close to you, or when you see the details about apprenticeship and their ability to expand to your region, we suggest you reach out to them.
And what I would add on top of that, Kelty, is while all seven of these programs are going to be in-person programs for the first year that they come online, many of them are looking at regional and statewide expansions through the development of asynchronous curricula, mobile labs, and partnerships with community colleges and employers throughout the state. And so, what's been fun and interesting for us to learn about as we've engaged with all seven of these new training providers is the number of different ways that they have created or are going to create entry points into broadband careers at different parts of the pathway. There are programs here for high school students, for opportunity youth, for adult learners, for current college students at the community and four-year level, interestingly enough, as well as even programs targeted at veterans. So more to come on this, but they're coming.
We don't have a slide on this next piece of information, but I want to share it with you all because when I worked at TEA, I was not aware of councils of government. But the councils of government are all of your local governments working together, just in the same way that multiple school districts will be under the umbrella of an education service center. I want to share this with you all because the broadband office has also allocated dollars to their association, Texas Association of Regional Councils, TARC. And there will be somebody assigned to every council of governments in the state to help provide technical assistance around broadband. And so, again, that may be another point of connection. One, and two, I think it's important for you all to know that COGS exist. And so, one of the things I've observed in moving from the education workforce space into the work we do at Texas Rural Funders is there's kind of two separate silos where, in particular, the broadband work is happening. You all are working hard with the partners that you know. Often COGS are working more in the infrastructure, road, water space. And sometimes people don't realize that there are parallel efforts happening. So I wanted to share that. The other piece of information that many of you may be plugged into is the Workforce Commission also received dollars from the Broadband Development Office for broadband apprenticeships. And so we don't have full information on that, but again, we'll add a slide with those two pieces of information before we send this out. Next slide. I'll let you wrap us.
Like any good essay, we told you what we're going to tell you. We told it, and now we're reminding you what we just shared. There are ways to make this happen in your region of the state. We can make broadband and water target occupations so that WIOA funds that flow through the local workforce board can help fund these programs. Um, the Workforce Commission, as many of you already know, publishes that list of regional target occupations on their website. We encourage you, if you don't already know, to go in, take a look. Does your workforce board identify broadband and water jobs as target occupations. If not, consider reaching out and having a conversation so you can get them on for the next update of the list. As we've already mentioned, get the word out. We know that our communities need more broadband jobs, more water operators. And so if you are a current pathways provider, if you work with them collaboratively in your region, have this conversation. Introduce the idea of water and broadband pathways for schools and partners in your region if they're not already being uh, rolled out or considered. And of course, these last 2 points, training providers, employers, one of the, I think, advantages that we have here in Texas is that we have employers that are ready, willing, able, enthusiastic to partner on these training programs and to help build out a pathway that works and brings people into the water and broadband workforce. We shared examples from the water sector, from the broadband sector. Many of these programs are actively looking for partners to bring these programs to other parts of the state that don't already have them. And so there are resources, not just funding, but also connections, employer relationships that are on the table ready for us to avail ourselves of to help train a infrastructure workforce, especially in rural Texas. And we're going to take the slides down and it's Q&A time.
I
If you
saw
have questions for us, don't be shy.
I saw someone had asked earlier in the chat if these courses were in wheat and, or sorry, Weckham, and I'm I don't know the answer 100%. I'm strongly inclined to say that it's likely that there are not multiple courses already outlined in Weckham because again, TEA and the coordinating board have not focused as much. But part of the reason we wanted to bring Seth forward is because we were really impressed that an employer association had done the hard work with two state entities to remove the barriers around licensure and courses in water. But again, just the coordinating board and TEA, like everyone else in the state, haven't been as focused on water and broadband because this has emerged pretty recently in the past year and a half to 2 years. Any other questions? Please feel free to either unmute yourself or drop it in chat.
I did have a question. Do you foresee in the next year these certifications and classes being added onto our target occupation lists locally and just across the state so that we can encourage training providers to start looking at adding classes to our WIOA list of training providers?
That's a great question, and I promise we didn't plant him in the audience. So that's part of why we're doing these presentations. Again, we presented at the Workforce Commission Conference. We've been telling anyone who will listen, it is up to the local workforce boards to infuse and make those changes. And again, on the slide, we talk about local knowledge. And so again, one of the most action-oriented, impactful things that you all can do is connect with your workforce boards and say, we've heard this presentation and we think water and broadband is important, so that it can be used to access that funding. And I would say, again, for me, it's a big vote of confidence and something impactful that the broadband office has put money over at the Workforce Commission to support apprenticeships. So it's not going away. We're just getting started. So the long and short of it is, again, I don't see it moving easily at the state level. And part of it is because of how we talked about high demand, high wage. It hasn't shown up yet. It requires the knowledge that all these dollars are flowing, but it hasn't shown up in your data at the regional level often. Other comments or questions?
A question on additional training or additional facets of training. Though this is great from a water and wastewater standpoint, from a municipal standpoint. We've had those challenges here and have been pretty good at overcoming them. This next round of funding that's coming out of Austin for water infrastructure, is there any is there anything in the pipeline, no pun intended, to create the jobs that will literally connect the water and the wastewater portion of this industry together? So the labor force that's predominantly commercial or local and in some cases national um, services that are provided. But if we're going to do rural, they've got to commute. And we all know if you move around, everyone's got a backhoe and everybody's got a bobcat. There's ways that I think the talent base is here. If we can find a way to get it quantified. I'm just wondering if there's anything there.
Thank you for the question. And I think it's an excellent question just in terms of how do we help, and if I understand it correctly, how are we helping unify the water and the wastewater jobs with other large infrastructure projects happening in the region? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. As a state, we're looking at a labor loss. Most of this labor force is going to come from out of the state because we don't have enough people trained here, and that's a crying shame because we've got people, and I'm not making light of it. If you can run a bobcat and a backhoe, you could probably be in this industry. It's getting the education to know what you can and can't do in real time, and to make that available through networking, probably more than anything else. Uh, Municipalities, I've been on the municipal government side of things, trying to get
Hmm.
jobs, getting programs completed, started. Let's do that. Getting started, never mind completed, is a yeoman's task. And if there were a way, if there were a way on a statewide basis, that'd be great. But I'd take it on a regional basis. We don't have to truck guys from Houston to Amarillo to do a job, and it's happening. So I'm just wondering what might be done specifically for rural. That's what we're talking about. How do we get these
Hmm.
kids to not have to leave here to go get a job?
You're speaking our language. That is part of why we did this report to try and bring attention to this so that, again, we put the report in front of the state agencies, but we agree with you. And I would say, using the forums that you all have, your conversations with the workforce boards, and also um, the what's very powerful in particular about water is that the Texas American Water Works Association is quite invested in what they've done with their curriculum. And
Yes.
so I think, Evan, you may have insight about what's going on with the particulars of water funding, if there's a carve out for an education component, but I think it is worth asking because there are a lot of programs that are about to be built out by the state agency, and so it's worth having conversations with American Water Works or your local workforce boards. But Evan, you may have more water insights.
Maybe a little. So a few things come to mind. Earlier this week, the Texas Water Development Board hosted its initial grants webinar for a new water infrastructure grant stream that is going to be allocated out through new investments in the Texas Water Fund from the past legislative session. I am not aware if some of those dollars could go toward workforce development specifically, but I can do some digging on that and we can include that in the follow-up to this webinar. Thinking specifically of the rural perspective of the water challenge, something I'm aware of that the Hill Country Alliance actually also has some interesting and really good draft resolutions around is the concept of one water, taking water and wastewater jobs and looking at how we can help unify them under a single management structure at the municipal level in rural areas. But I think the most relevant reflection that Kelty and I might have on this sort of larger topic of these are aligned sectors where there's a lot of crossover in skills. And so, how can we get folks onto infrastructure projects in general, not just water or broadband or roads? It actually makes me think of examples that we see from the broadband sector. Um, and so I think of some of the work happening at a regional level through a council of government, Deep East Texas Council of Government, for example, where we can look at broadband or transportation projects or water projects as an opportunity to also lay down line for other types of utilities and infrastructure if we have the right of way open. And so I think Kelty maybe just plus one to your reflection on there are opportunities for regional level collaboration. And I think a local council of government may be a natural place to start some of those ideas for how we can make sure there's crossover as we developing these pipelines.
Evan, just to your point of the grant program, I was part of that call. I also am a representative for Region B and G in this region. There is no money available within that program for training. It is crazy. It's criminal that it's not there. So that's got to be addressed, and I think they're going to push us other places to try to find that money, but there ought to be, maybe it can be done through those that actually are contracted to perform the function, that they then would fund some of the additional training, but I don't know how, this is a decade-long process that's going to take place. So there's time to get some of that change, but in the current iteration, there's nothing for training in there.
And
So
Tom, it's helpful that you bring, again, this is why we're having this webinar and doing these presentations. So what I would say is it may make sense to talk with Texas Water Foundation, for
Sure.
whom this is a major priority, and
Mhm.
Texas American Water Works, who we gathered all the information from to be able to talk to you all about their training.
Okay.
I feel like our approach at Texas Rural Funders is there is power in numbers and to build a coalition. And so it's helpful to hear what you're sharing as well, because we can include that in our conversations with our partners.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we've dropped the registration in case anybody wants to see what we're doing in Dallas. And we will, as I said earlier in the chat, be sending a follow-up email with a recording, as well as the PowerPoint will include the links. And we just appreciate you all taking the time to talk with us and to listen to our presentation today. Feel free to reach out if there's anything you want to talk about offline. Thank you for your time.